going to switch to this. Okay, so this is, let me just move this around a smidge. Oops, okay. Sorry about that. Just trying to see how I can best see comments and do this at the same time. Okay, I think this is it. Alrighty. So today we're going to talk about doing devotional work at altars. Mirakel brought up a really good point, and that is that that we always hear, what you should spend time at your altar. Once you find your goddess, set up an altar and spend all this time at your altar. And but nobody really talks about like what to do at your altar. Just that you should be there. So today I'm just gonna break it down really quickly and just kind of break it down into an easy formula. I think the most important thing about this, as everything that I talk about, is that if you plan to invite this into your life, if you plan to make a devotional practice part of your life, that you make it realistic and don't kind of overthink what it should be, because there is no should, right? So today we're going to talk about like what devotional work is. I'm going to break down the structure. I'm going to break down each step of, it's just like a 3-step like structure, and then like actually doing the work and what that kind of looks like. So devotional work is different for everybody. It's different for everybody. And I think I mentioned this on here a little later. When you look at like an exercise video, especially from the 80s, you see like the person in the middle doing everything, and then you see a person on the side like doing things moderately but not as full out, and then you see another person in the back who's like doing a lot of modifications. And when we talk about practices, like ritual practices, no matter what, any kind of practice, like it's like that. There are some people who are going to be able to have these giant rituals, who have all of the beautiful things and all of the time and all of the space and all of the supplies and everything that they need. Hi, Amanda. So there are people who will have like all of the things, and there are people who will need some modifications. Maybe they don't have as much time, or maybe they don't have as many things, or they don't have as much time. And then you've got the person in the back who needs a lot more modifications. Maybe they only have time once a month instead of once a week or once every day. Maybe they don't have a lot of things, maybe, so there are different adjustments that can be made. And one person is not better than another person. So when you're doing devotional work, it definitely isn't like a competitive thing. I mean, it's really hard not to want to put together like the most beautiful altar, because you scroll through Instagram and you see all of these altars that are beautiful, and this is my altar to Hecate, and it's just like glowing and beautiful, and there's 5 million little things on it, and it's just so beautiful. And part of us just naturally is kind of like, hi Jenny, just like, it's kind of used to being a little bit competitive. Like, when you see that, you're like, oh, maybe I should do that, or maybe or I want to do that, or I want my altar to look like that. Like it just happens. But the important thing to remember when we think about things like that is that the people who are posting that on Instagram spent like an hour staging their altar to look like that, most likely. Especially the ones that have like the flower petals just like laying beautifully over their open book. Like, they didn't just do that. It's a whole thing. I've been in Instagram pods where they talk about how long it takes them to stage one picture. And that's good if they want to do that. I do not have the time or patience to do things like that. So what you're going to see is real stuff from me. But my point is that it's going to be different for everybody. There are going to be people with these beautiful altars who have all the time, and there are people who are lucky if they have 5 minutes at the end of the day. No one's better than another. It's all just different. So what is devotional work? So it's basically work done in devotion to a deity or another concept. If you're not into deities, if you would rather devote yourself to an element, or devote yourself to a concept, or devote yourself to another type of spirit ally, devotional work isn't just completely about a deity. You could do devotional work for all kinds of different things, towards all different kinds of things. Today we're going to talk about deities for the most part, but we're pretty much, what we're going to go over can be applied to different kinds of devotional work. And devote simply means to give time or resources to. That's it. That's devotional work. But that is a really open concept, right? Like, give time or resources to. How do I give time or resources to a deity? You know, there are lots of different ways, and I've talked about them, I think, before on some live streams. Like, you can volunteer your time. If your deity is, you know, like a protectress of children, you could, you know, donate your time to a shelter or to a hospital. Or if your deity, you know, is about the earth or about trees, you can dedicate some time to that as well. So those are like kind of larger scale things that you can do. And most of the time those things take a lot of preparation and a lot of like energy. But sometimes we don't want to take just like, we don't want to have to plan everything, right? Because sometimes if we are like, okay, I'm going to plan this big thing, whether it's a ritual or I'm going to plan this big thing of charity work, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to like focus on my intention to my goddess the entire time. And when we think about all of the steps that it takes to plan that, sometimes it gets overwhelming and it just doesn't happen. You know, and again, I'm talking realistically. It's happened to me. I've wanted to do things, but it's, the overwhelm is real, right? So we're going to kind of break it down today. Okay. And this is what I was talking about earlier. How different levels of effort, time, and commitment are for different people. There's not one that's better than the other. Sorry, I'm refilling my wine. It's been a day. Effort, time, and commitment. These are 3 things that you will want to consider when you start thinking about like what your practice might look like. I will talk about that in a bitty. So this is the simple working structure. The structure allows for everyone to create a meaningful devotional working. And it seems kind of self-explanatory, but within the structure, it gives you a lot of flexibility. So we have the first step, which is preparation. And we have the second step, which is the actual working. And then we have the close. Okay? And if you guys have any questions, just go ahead and pop them in the comments and I'll address them. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the different things you could do for each of these 3 steps. So step 1 is preparation. Now, this is basically like the preparation for your work, whatever that work is going to be. We'll talk about that in a moment. But these are some options that you have, right? You could do cleansing, like smoke cleansing. You could anoint with oil. That could be anointing yourself. That could be anointing like your statue. It could be anointing something that you're going to be using during your working. It could be any sort of thing. Breath work. You can use intentional breathing, like box breathing, to center yourself. And if you don't know what box breathing is, you're not alone. I didn't know what it was until my sister told me about it. It turns out it's basically what I've been teaching for a really long time. You inhale, like deep belly breaths for 4 seconds. You hold it for 4 seconds. You exhale for 4 seconds. And then you hold that for 4 seconds. It's like a box, hence box breathing. So you can use something simple like that to kind of center yourself. You can like ground and center with that as well. You can just take time to be still, like stillness meditation. You can choose a song to listen to before you begin your work. And one really cool thing about songs, same thing like with scent as well, songs and scent. If you play the same song every time before you begin your devotional, and it could just be 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be like a 4-minute song that you sit through, although that you totally could do that. You could sit with an intention for that 4 minutes. But when you listen to it over and over again, it's going to put you in that space after a while. Just like scent. So if you light a specific scent before you do ritual, every time you do a ritual, that smell is going to put you in that ritual like headspace. It's just kind of like, it's like muscle memory, but like with their minds, I guess. You can set your space. You can intentionally create your space as part of your preparation. Now this is this is my space right now. This is my Aphrodite altar. It's really simple. You can see I do have some books on the altar. You know, I have like a specific space for her in my room, I guess, in my office and magical and craft room, whatever this wonderful space I have is. But if you don't have a space that you can always have up, then setting your space can be part of your preparation. Now, I like having a space that's already set up, and I suggest that if you want to create a practice that you do daily or weekly or just like on a regular basis, that you try to find some space, you know, in your home where you will have the privacy to like do your devotionals and set it up. It doesn't have to be big. Obviously, this is like, I don't know, 12 by 12, 15 by 15. And, you know, I used to have like a huge thing, and I have like my everyday altar over here, but like it's much easier to shrug your shoulders and not do devotional work if you have to set up your space, unless you intentionally make that part of your preparation. Okay? Then we have evocation. So there's a difference between evocation and invocation. And many people kind of conflate these two words, especially in like the witchy spaces, I guess. And we see this like in church and stuff. They'll be like, okay, well, we're going to say the invocation. I think I remember that on a flyer. I've not been to church in a very long time. The difference between invocation and evocation is really simple. Invocation asks something to come inside you, like inside your body, like, you know, like aspecting the goddess or like deity possession, or, you know, and that's a whole nother thing. That would be a whole nother live stream. But evocation is where you evoke your deity to be present. So invocation is bringing something in. Evocation is asking something to be present in your circle or in your space. So you can do a deity evocation as part of your prep, or you can like put it as part of your center as well, as part of your work. But you can just ask her to come to you, and you can use the same evocation every single time, or you can do a different evocation every single time. You can write one, you can read it, you can memorize it, you can just say something like from your heart. It's up to you. And it's all about how you work best. It's not about like, I'm a better witch because I have my stuff memorized. No, it's not about that at all. Having your stuff memorized sometimes is more difficult in ritual than reading something, because when you're reading something, you're able to read it with part of your mind and also experience things outside of it. And sometimes when you memorize something, you're trying to recall it. If you haven't said it, if it's really long or something you haven't said so many times, a lot of your energy is focused on saying the words right, rather than not having to worry about that and having it written down. Okay? All right. So these are some ideas for step 1 of your devotional ritual preparation. Okay. Now we're going to talk about step 2, which is the actual center of your devotional offering. And these are just 5 ideas. 1 is an offering. Now, it seems super simple, but the cool thing about doing an offering is that you have like unlimited ideas, unlimited like options to do these offerings. You can offer a poem. You can read a poem aloud, whether it's a historical poem or a modern poem or a poem you wrote. That in itself is devotional work. Okay? Does evocation include epithets? Yes, it definitely can include epithets, especially if you honor a goddess and your focus is on like a specific epithet. Like for the most part, sorry, that's my cat box detector, because my dog likes to get in there sometimes. So yes, evocation can definitely include epithets. It usually, when I'm writing an evocation, it usually does use at least a couple of the epithets. Because when you're evoking somebody, so if you don't know what an epithet is, let's start with that. Some people might not know what an epithet is. So an epithet is kind of like a different name or a different facet to the goddess, because many of our goddesses were honored in many different ways, right? So Aphrodite, my Aphrodite over here, I primarily honor her as Aphrodite. I can't talk, sorry. Aphrodite, your Urania, which is like Aphrodite of the heavens. So her love is not like the like carnal love. It's more like the love, like the love of everything and everybody. It's like a different kind of love. If I wanted to evoke her in a different way, I might evoke her as Aphrodite Pandemos, or Aphrodite Aria, or Aphrodite Acrea. Like, there are a lot of different epithets that you could use. So especially if you are focusing on something, like let's say you are doing some spring work, and like let's say I'm doing spring, and now I'm thinking I might show you something else if I can figure out how to do that. Sorry. If you're doing something springy, you might want to honor her as, like, if she has a spring side, then you can honor her as like her spring side. So like, for example, Persephone, you know, she descends to the underworld and then she comes back up, right? So if you are doing, depending on like how you see, like what time of the year you see that happening, you know, if it's like a fall to winter time and you want to honor her and her like underworld aspects, then you would honor her in that way and use whatever epithets are attached to her. Or if it's spring, that as well. Because many of our deities have a lot of different stories, especially if you're like honoring like Greek gods or Roman gods. You've got a lot of written storytelling about them. It's a little bit more difficult when you kind of get up north to like the Celtic gods, because a lot of their lore was oral, so there's not a whole lot that was written down. But there you go. So short story long, yes. Evocation can include epithets. Alrighty, so back to offerings. Poetry. You can read a poem. You can sing a song. You can do a physical offering. So that could be like lighting a candle, or that could be incense or honey or olive oil or flowers, or, you know, something else that you're burning, or, you know, something that's important to you, or, you know, it could be anything that could be a physical offering. If you like dedicated, like let's say you honor Athena and you wrote an essay as a devotion to her, you could take that essay and, I don't know, you could burn it, you could place it on your altar. That itself could be, you know, the actual creation creatively was the offering itself, but you could also honor that as part of a devotional ritual. And then lastly, a creative offering that could be painting, singing, drawing, anything like that. So you could do an offering. A sacrifice is similar, but usually a sacrifice is kind of like a quid pro quo thing. It's an offering, but it's almost like an exchange. Like, I am going to sacrifice this in hopes that you will give this to me. So, I personally don't do a ton of sacrifices, but people do. That's their jam. Devotional journal. That's something that I loved doing. I started doing this. And it's basically a journal where you write everything down. Like, you can work in your journal as a devotional act. So when I have my devotional journal has her family tree, it has ancient poetry, it has new poetry, it has a list of epithets. Because just saying all of her epithets that you know, like out loud, like that could be a devotional act in itself. It has all kinds of things. And if this is something that you're interested in, I actually have a devotional journal published on Amazon. It's called Oh My Goddess. So you can search for that, or I'll pop it in the comments once we're done. But working in, and it's based on like my devotional journal, this little red book over here. This is my devotional journal, you know. So this is something that I work in. As you can see, I've got like bookmarks and such things. But, you know, just working in it, just doing the research is part of a devotional work. You know, if I'm sitting here, I'm going through my books, or I'm looking on the internet and I'm finding a poem that I like and I'm writing that poem down in my devotional journal, like, it's pretty cool, because then, here, I'll show you a couple things, like cult terms. I don't know. I think it's going to be mirrored. I'm sorry. Cult terms, other titles. So this is like a list of epithets. Immortal children, like Orphic hymns, things like that. And one of the really, thanks Chelsea, I love you so much. One of the really rad things about working in your devotional journal is, you know, you wrote all of these poems down. You wrote all of her epithets down, and her cult, like, and her sacred days, and all of this research. And one of the cool things is that in itself is devotional work. And now, when you want to read a poem to her as a devotion, you don't have to go looking for one, because it's already there. It's already in your devotional journal. You just open it up and you've got it. You already have it going on. I highly recommend this. Okay. So, we have meditation and communion. So meditate with a specific intention. So you can do this a couple ways. Some people really prefer guided meditation, and I'm sure there are goddess guided meditations out there. One thing that I think is kind of underrated is the idea of just like stillness, intentional still meditation. So basically you go into a meditative state, maybe start with that box breathing, maybe ground and center, get into a comfortable place, and just sit quietly, taking your deep breaths with an intention or a question in your mind. So that intention can be, you know, communion. Like, you just want to be calm and have communion. It can be, what can I do to honor you? Or what kind of offerings would you like? Or, you know, things like that. You know, like I came to my goddess through like desperate communion meditation when I was dealing with a spiritual disconnect. Tarot and oracle cards. Sure, you can use tarot and oracle cards however you like. Some people will do divination whilst in the middle of a devotional ritual and ask for that deity's help in either like guiding their hand or interpreting the results. It just depends on what you want, what you're looking for. Also, tarot and oracle cards can be part of your space. It can be part of your altar. That could even be part of your prep. If you want to go through your, like, let's say you have, you know, a beautiful oracle set, and you want to choose one of the cards to kind of represent your intention, or to represent the goddess, or, you know, to represent an offering. You can do that at the beginning of your, as preparation even. You can go through that, and even if you have an already set space like this, you can go ahead and just add to it. And that's another thing, you can just add to your space for preparation. One thing that I did not mention for preparation, and I probably should, is just make sure that you have everything that you're going to need before you like start your work. So make sure you kind of have a plan of what you're going to do, so you can just have everything in your like devotional space. Okay, spell work. If you want your deities to help with spell working, you can do this as part of your work, or your center, I like to call it. And like Miracle brought up, tarot, oracle, divination, those things also, you can, you know, you bring that in and you can ask them to help you in some way. Okay? All right. And that's more communion than like devotional work, but you're still devoting it to communion with your goddess or your god or your spirit ally. So those are some things that you can use for your center. And then finally, we have the close. So if you evoked your deity and you ask them to come forward, step forward into your space, you want to let them go. You want to say thank you. I never say dismiss, because that's rude. And I wouldn't want somebody dismissing me. I'm not going to dismiss a god or a goddess. That just is rude. So I like to say release. A lot of people, you know, tack on the go if you must stay, if you will, sort of. Liturgy into their releases. If you lit any candles, blow them out. If you want to do a final prayer or gratitude, you know, something to say thank you to your goddess for coming, for showing up. Or if you don't, even if you don't feel like they showed up in your space, that you can give them gratitude for being there for you every day. Just because they don't show up in your space and you don't feel them does not mean that they're not listening, does not mean that they're not there, right? So you can always say some sort of final prayer or speak your gratitude. And then finally, you can journal about your experiences. So that can be in your devotional journal, that can be in a separate journal. In the Oh My Goddess journal, there is a space for that. There are journaling prompts and then a bunch of blank pages for you to like fill in. That way you can you can see and remember what kind of communion you had, if you had a communion. So if your work was sitting in the space and asking, what offerings should I give to you? And you hear the word incense, or you smell incense, or you hear the ocean, or you know what I mean? Like, you can experience those things in different ways. And sometimes meditation is a little bit like dreaming, where you are sure you're going to remember everything, but you're probably not going to remember everything. So that's why it's a really good idea to journal about these things. Okay. Now, putting it all together. All right. Make sure you are being realistic when you create a practice. I said that in the beginning, and this is the most important thing. Because if you are not realistic, whatever that is to you, then chances are you're going to be setting yourself up for like not being able to do that. I don't want to say failure, because it really isn't like failure, but you're setting yourself up to be disappointed in your own self. And we do not want to do that. We got enough going on, right? So we always want to set ourselves up for success, even in our spiritual lives. So just make sure you're being realistic. Okay, so we're going to look back at our simple working structure. We've got preparation is step 1, work is step 2, close is step 3. Okay, I'm trying to remember what the next thing is. Okay, so when we talk about preparation, work, and close, what's really cool about this is you can just take a little bit like it's a menu. You can pick something from preparation, pick 1 or 2 things from work, and pick a close. You can do different things every time. You can experiment. Or if you want to make it pretty easy for you, once you really find something you like as part of your prep and your close, you can just do the same thing over and over again, especially if it's playing music. Play music, light a candle. That's your preparation. Play music, light a candle, say 5 of her epithets. That's your prep, let's say. And your close is blowing out those candles and saying a thank you prayer. Short, 1 sentence thank you prayer. Okay? So you've got your prep. It's pretty easy. Your close, that's pretty easy. And you just do that over and over again. So every time you come to your altar, all you have to do is worry about like your work. What are you going to do as an offering? Are you going to say a poem? Are you going to work in your journal? Are you going to open your journal and then say like, and then, read a poem that you wrote or read a poem that somebody else wrote? Are you going to go through your books? Like I have a couple like Aphrodite devotionals that are pretty powerful and awesome. And I've copied some of those things into my journal because like I just want this to be like my special own Bible book kind of. But are you going to read something from there? Are you going to do an offering? Are you going to do a sacrifice? Are you going to meditate? That's all you have to worry about because you already have your prep and your clothes done, right? That's it. It's just, what am I going to do? What singular devotional act am I going to do? So it can be super easy like that, right? So, or you can make it be a much more ornate, serious, solemn thing, right? It just depends again on what's realistic for you. How often you're going to do your ritual. And that's what we're going to talk about next. What to consider when creating your devotional practice. Okay. These are a couple things to consider. Number 1, your time. How much time do you have to really devote to this per week? Can you put aside a half an hour per week? Can you set aside 10 minutes a day? Can you set aside 5 minutes a day? Can you set aside 5 minutes a week? It all depends on what you are able to give. Like how much space you actually have. What time of day? When would you have time to do this practice? If you're going to do it in the daytime, and we're going to talk about environment, but if you're going to do it in the daytime, outside, do you really want to light candles? The wind's probably going to blow it out, right? And you're not going to be able to see the flame anyway. So think about what time of day. Is it going to be night? Because nighttime is going to give you like kind of different options that are like preferable to daytime. Does that mean don't light candles during the daytime? Of course not. Like in my coven, we light candles during the day all the time, especially for Sabbaths. And does the wind blow them out? Yes. Do we do them anyway because it's a devotional act? Yes. But depending on like what your actual intentions are, just think about what time of day. Also consider your energy level. How much energy do you have to devote to your practice? This means if you know Wednesday is your long day and you know you're going to have meetings all day at work because that's your meeting day, or that's the day where, you know, your kids have all of their activities. They have soccer and Girl Scouts and everything, and you come in at like late and you're so tired. You know, if you know like what days are your good days versus your bad days, you know, consider that when you're trying to set up your practice, right? So if you want to, let's say you want to honor Artemis on a full moon, and that full moon falls on your meeting day. Now, that's something to consider. You know you're going to be exhausted, so what are you going to do? You have a couple options. You can change it to the day like before that Wednesday. I'm just going to say Wednesday because Wednesday is my bad meeting day. You can change it to the day before, or you can change it to the day after because that full moon energy is kind of concentrated in those 3 days. Or you can scale down your devotional work because you know you're not going to have a ton of energy to put into it. So your devotional work on a day that you have no energy might be light a candle, read a poem, say thank you, blow out the candle. You've done your devotional work. Because if you plan this like 4-step, beautiful, huge ritual, like, and you're like, I'm going to do it on the full moon, and you know you're going to be exhausted, you're going to be too tired. You're going to be too tired, and if you do the ritual, you'll probably feel miserable. And that is like the opposite of what we're trying to do here. So just really kind of consider your energy, and of course, again, consider your environment. If you have a space, like I am very grateful and lucky and happy. I have my own little space. I could do whatever I want back here in my space. If you don't have a space of your own and you share space like with your husband or boyfriend or partner or spouse or your wife and in a bedroom, right? That is going to be a little bit different than like your ritual might be a little bit different than if you have your own space, or or you can go outside versus being inside. You know, you're outside. If you want to do your rituals outside, do you have a privacy fence, or are you open to everybody? If you're open to everybody, naked dancing might not be something that, you know, you might want to do. Or you might, because I don't know. That's your business. But, you know, just kind of consider your energy and your environment. So it's your time, the time of day, your energy, and your environment. If you feel like you are not having enough time in your day, like you're just like, okay, I'm trying, it's just not happening. I have a tool on my website, which is reallifewitchery.com. It's even on the front page. Like, you don't even have to go to the Work With Me page or any of the other pages. If you just scroll down on the front page, it's called Making Space for Your Spiritual Practice. And you can download it. You have to put your email in, and you can just download it. And it kind of gives you... It gives you a way to kind of weed out what things take some of your energy and to try to organize things so that you're spending more of your energy, you're making space for like what you really want to do, and in this instance would be creating that spiritual practice. Okay. And then I think this is my final slide, right? Yeah. Okay. So if you have any questions, start typing them in. Because there is a lag on this of like 20 seconds. So the next steps in your practice, again, so after this, we are done with this presentation. We're done with this talk. After this, you might feel like fired up. Okay, I'm going to start my devotional practice. This is what's going to happen. So what do I do next? So your next steps would be, number one, consider your time, your energy, your environment, and availability. How much time do you have to devote to your practice? How much energy will you have on those days? What environment are you working with? And like, when are you available? Number 2, decide what you'd like to do as like your usual preparation. When you think, just like quiet your mind and envision yourself sitting or standing in front of an altar, getting ready to do a devotional ritual. And what do you see yourself doing? So you don't have to just like use your brain, like, what am I going to do? No, just quiet yourself and just ask your inner self, and likely something will come up. We kind of forget of that. We have this like amazing intuition, inner guidance that we have. So you can utilize that to help you decide what you want to do as your usual preparation. And then choose a couple of those center working ideas to try out. Maybe choose a poem, maybe start your devotional journal, maybe do some research and find out what your goddess liked as an offering. Maybe plan to meditate and ask her what she would like as an offering. Just choose, 1 or 2 things that you'd like to try out. Maybe 3 things, and then just, try them out on different days. See what you think. Create your closing. What are you going to do? You've got your prep and you've got your closing. What are you going to do for those? And then just plan to do it. And that's it. That's it. Opening or preparation, your working, your closing. It can be 5 minutes. It can be 15 minutes. It can be an hour. It can be whatever you need it to be, really. And it doesn't have to be the same every single time either. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the comments so we can get to them before I say goodbye. But really, that's all it really is. That's all there is to it, is just these simple steps. And being realistic and being kind to yourself is also very, very important. And maybe sometime, maybe on her feast day, you might want to make something more ornate. You might want to build a specific altar. You might want to do 4 or 5 things as part of your working instead of 1 or 2. But, it's all up to you and how you want to do it. Okay? So that's it. I do not see any more questions. If you do have any more questions, go ahead and pop them in the comments. You can tag me so I can make sure I answer them for you. Because I just want to make sure that, we covered everything that you might need. All right. I'm going to pop this back onto me. All right. So I will let you guys go. I really, really enjoyed this. This is fun. I got to push all the buttons and make all the things happen. And I just want to thank you for coming here and spending your time with me this evening, because I know you have a lot of things going on. And if you have watched the replay, feel free to type the word replay in the replay so that I know that you watched it, because that's kind of how I judge what I'm going to do in the future and how often I'm going to do these sorts of live events. All right, guys. Love you guys. I will see you later. Bye.